Chocolate Fever by Robert Kimmel Smith. Chapter 11. At Sugar Canes. His name was Alfred Cane, but his friends called him Sugar. Sugar Cane was the owner of one of the largest candy distributing companies in the East. Chances are, if you've ever bought a candy bar east of the Ohio River, it came from Alfred Cane's warehouse. It was a very large business. But Sugar Cane was still interested in everyone who worked for him. So when he saw Mac's big rig pull up in the warehouse yard, Mr. Cane was very much relieved. So was Mac and Henry. They had made that telephone call to Mrs. Green, you see, and a happy, tearful conversation it was. As soon as Mac dropped off his load of candy, he was going to take Henry home. Henry liked Mr. Cane the minute he saw him. There was something about the twinkle in his eyes that even his spectacles didn't hide that made him seem friendly. And with his gray hair and mustache, Mr. Cane looked not a little like Santa Claus. Henry liked Mr. Cane's office, too. It was warm and cozy, and the walls were lined with shelves containing every single product the big warehouse handled. Imagine seeing every kind of candy bar, cookie, and cake all in one spot. It made you hungry just to be there. When they had seated themselves and recounted their adventures, laughing quite a bit in the bargain, Mr. Cane leaned forward in his chair and took a long, close look at Henry. "Henry Green," he said, "if it won't offend you, I would like to ask you something about those big, brown spots you seem to have all over." It seemed to Henry that he had explained 1,000,000 times already, but he went through the story again from the beginning to the end. Mr. Cane was listening closely, paying keen attention to Henry's every word. When Henry finished, Mr. Cane spoke. "And so you say that this Dr. Fargo of yours called it chocolate fever, eh? I find that terribly interesting." "I find it just plain terrible," said Henry. "Big, brown, ugly spots all over, looking like a freak, people staring at me, and all because of chocolate." "And all because of chocolate," Mr. Cane echoed. He shook his head once or twice, and a strange look came over his face. There was a long silence. When Alfred Cane spoke again, it was in a quiet voice. "Henry Green," he said, "let me tell you a story. It's about a boy I once knew, a boy like you. Oh, this boy loved chocolate too, like you once did. Chocolate in the morning, yes? Morning, noon, and night he ate the magic stuff. And if you think you have invented new ways of chocolateness, so did this lad. Chocolate-covered fried chicken, chocolate French toast with chocolate syrup. There was no end to the ways of chocolate with this boy I'm speaking of. And, like you, a strange thing happened to him. In fact, the very same thing." "You mean," said Henry, suddenly excited. "Yes," said the old man with a nod. "Big brown spots all over." "Chocolate fever!" Henry exclaimed. "The very same." Henry could hardly contain himself. "But how did he was cured." "How was he cured, you mean?" Alfred Cane was smiling now. "Well, the cure was in 2 parts, and the first was the most important. You see, this boy I once knew had to learn a very sad lesson, as all young people must do. Although life is grand and pleasure is everywhere, we can't have everything we want every time we want it. It's a hard lesson, but it comes in time." "Yes," said Henry, "I think I understand. Maybe I have had too much of a good thing." "Indeed." "I'll eat less chocolate then, only when I really, really want to." "Very good, that is half the battle." "And the second half?" Henry asked. Alfred Cane smiled. "Very simple. When you think about it, what is the exact opposite of chocolate? What is the one flavor that is the reverse of the chocolate we know and love?" "Vanilla!" Mr. Cane walked slowly to his desk, opened the top right-hand drawer, and brought out a small white box. "Vanilla pills, Henry Green, the very thing that will cure your chocolate fever within the hour. That is, if you have truly learned the first and hardest part of your cure." Henry could hardly speak. He wanted to laugh. He was so happy, but he wanted to cry. He was so sad, but all he could do was nod. "Wahoo!" said Mac with a whoop. "Vanilla pills, who would have thought?" "There's one more thing," Mr. Kane said. "That young man I spoke about, the one who reminded me so much of you." "Yes?" "When he grew up, he decided to spend his life bringing joy and happiness to others. And the way he did it, you see, was to bring chocolate to the world, to make sure that when anyone wanted pleasure, there would be chocolate some place close by." Henry thought he knew who that other boy was. "His name?" he asked. "His name was Alfred Kane," said Alfred Kane, "but his friends called him Sugar." Mr. Kane stepped forward and shook Henry's hand. "Now you run along with Mac, and if you take those pills on the way, I guarantee that your chocolate fever will be gone by the time you get home. Goodbye now, and remember what I've said." "Goodbye, Mr. Kane," said Henry. "You can call me Sugar, and you can call me Henry."